Welcome to the Seats Talks about functional church. One of the core values of Seats and the Schools of Mission program is talking about something that we call functional church. And this is something that's been developed over the course of I guess probably overall the last 10 years at Seats. It by no means started with us. You know, we've developed and adapted various different teachings and understandings about the church from other sources, and but we really feel that this is sort of an essential part, an essential component of the church, and perhaps what the church has been missing over the past number of years. It's our desire to help develop and grow functional churches in our communities, so that they might be able to reach out and have an impact on their communities. And this becomes the sort of the foundational core for churches that want to engage with society. And so I thought I'd give you a few minutes here talking about the basic fundamental concept of functional church, and then through the next several Seats talks we'll talk about the individual components of those and go on into some in-depth ways of how we can apply these to our churches today and how we can apply them to our ministry today. But ultimately, I guess we certainly need to start that with the fact that churches, what really makes up a church, and I guess different people have identified through the years, from right from the beginning of time, but through Augustine, through Calvin, through Luther and Calvin, up into the present days, and even if you look at a major evangelical theological textbook today talking about the church, they'll talk about some aspects of the church that are sort of essential parts of the church, and other parts that we determine by examining the church itself and seeing what it teaches us and tells us. And typically the church the people have talked about 4 different marks to a church. What are the 4 things that sort of identify what is a church and whether a church exists? And of course, there's the preaching of the word. There's some kind of organizational system or church government. There's some kind of a sacrament or something that happens, Lord's Supper, baptism, or whatever else people have added to those over the years. And of course there's worship that happens. And of course, typically if we were to look for a church on our own that we wanted to find out so that we could worship in, we would look for one of those 4 components. I guess the discussion that we've developed here, particularly at Seats, in our Metro Manila context and in our Philippines context, is that a church that really, is that it? As long as we have those 4 components, those 4 marks, that we've actually truly developed a church. And we like to look beyond that and say, okay, you can have a church that exists, but that church needs to move beyond that and become functional. So you have something that exists, and then something that becomes functional that we need to develop into something that's functional. Now, something that we commonly use as an example here at Seats is something like this. I've got a series of devices that are on a little ring here, and I guess maybe you could, if I asked you what this was, probably everybody who's looking at this video would say, that is a key, isang susi. Okay, this is a key that can be used for something. And so I guess I would ask you, how do you know that this is a key? And some of you might say, well, it looks like a key. Okay, it looks like a key. It has these bumps on here, and it has some grooves that are cut in the side, and that's for inserting into the lock to turn it. It has some kind of a shape at the back, sort of a handle that you can hold onto it. It's made out of metal, which generally most keys are made out of. It's got a hole that you can place it onto a ring. And I guess probably if I were to ask 100% of the people who were watching this would say this is a key. Now, I'm not a video expert. I'm not making some kind of fake video to fool you. And I would like to say that I also am 100% sure that this is a key. Now, keys are very, very useful, particularly if it's hot weather outside and you got a fan blowing across your desk or wherever it is. These are very, very good. You stick them on top of the table, on top of your papers don't fly away in the wind. Maybe they're also useful for medical purposes. If you have some wax in your ears, you can, and I don't recommend this, but you can use this perhaps to clean the wax out of your ears or other things like that. Sometimes you can use them to make noise. They're toys, we can toss them around and things like that. And so, here you've got these keys. The problem is that that's not the function of a key. What's the function of a key? Well, simply, a key's function is to be inserted into a lock to turn so that that lock disengages, and so that you're able to open a door or to start a car or to open a padlock or something like that. That's the purpose of what these keys are. So the church, so this key may have all the marks of a key. It looks like a key. I suppose it smells like a key. It tastes like a key. I'm not sure I want to do that. It sounds like a bunch of keys together. So these have the marks of a key. But apart from their function, these keys become useless. We can use them for other things, but their value goes down greatly unless we use them for the intended function, intended purpose of inserting into a lock, turning so that we can open the door. And the same is with the church, I guess. We have a church that exists. It has the marks of a church. People worship there. They get together on Sunday morning or Wednesday night or whenever they do it, Friday nights. The word is preached. Worship happens. They have board meetings and other kind of organizational, congregational meetings. There's a system. Their sacraments are celebrated, even if we don't call them sacraments, and we call them ordinances. So like Lord's Supper, communion, or baptism, and things like that. And so we can do those things, and those are the marks of a church. We truly know that that's what a church does. That's a church. But what about the function of a church? If a key has its function to open a lock, what function does the church have? Why does the church exist? And I would like to share with you the 4 fundamental functions that Seats tries to develop in churches and in Christians. And I'll introduce these using Greek words, but then we'll talk about and explaining them through other words, other English words perhaps, that might help us better understand it. But there's 4 functions. The first one we would call Kerygma. The second one we call Koinonia. Then we have Marturia, and then Diakonia. So we have those 4 words. And I guess let's start with, what do we want to start with? I guess we want to start with Koinonia. Koinonia is, maybe another word to describe, is kingdom building. We want to build the kingdom of God. And it's not that we're building a kingdom for ourselves. Me as Mike Fast is building a kingdom, or you as whoever you are is building a kingdom for God. But really it's revealing the joys of the kingdom of God to people outside of that faith community. So people somehow see something within our community, within our group, that they say, hey, there's something different about that. There's something that maybe I want. And in some ways this might be attractional to a certain extent, but there is some kind of an attraction to the joys of the kingdom. And it's almost like Jan Hedinga says, it's like you've got your nose pressed up to the glass and you're trying to look and see. Your nose is there. What's in the window? What's in there? What's in there? I want to get it. And that's what the development of the kingdom is all about. So that's the first function of the church. Koinonia, kingdom building. I guess we use other words. We use the words like fellowship, which maybe has lost some of its meaning. In Tagalog, we say pagkakaisa or pakikipagkapwa, or there's a list of about 15 different Filipino words to describe that concept. And maybe you can think of some of the things. But we like to talk about kingdom building, building and revealing the kingdom of God to people. That's one of the functions of the church. And I would argue that if your church is not doing that, then perhaps some of the functionality of that church and some of the things that the church needs to be doing is lost, because it's not doing what it's intended to do. So that's the first one, koinonia, or kingdom building. The second one we'll talk about is truth-telling. This is marturia. And of course we've always heard marturia because it relates to the word martyr. Those people are martyrs, people who are killed for their faith. And it's because of they're telling the truth about the world and about God and about the kingdom. And I guess in a sense, if we want to define it, we can say that to be a truth teller, the church needs to bring God's prophetic voice by engaging society with biblical truth. How does the church interact with the issues that are going on in the greater society? How does it engage those with biblical truth? That is what we call truth-telling, marturia, saying things that are right about the world rather than trying to find some other reasons, and bringing the Bible to bear as an answer and a bearer of that truth. So we started out with koinonia, kingdom building. We came to marturia, or truth-telling, and then we come to the third one, which is kerygma. And kerygma is really proclamation of the good news. Okay, proclaiming the good news, and it's not something that is it's different than preaching the word. It's proclaiming the good news. And I guess what do we call it? I guess if we want a definition, we'd say declaring the good news of Jesus Christ to all people. And so it's the fact that this good news is founded upon Jesus Christ himself. It's not founded upon anything else, it's something else. And so one of the core functions of the church is proclaiming the good news, or making the good news good. So we've seen the first function of the church as being koinonia, or kingdom building. The second function of the church is truth-telling, or marturia. The third function of the church is Kerygma, or proclaiming the good news of Jesus Christ. And finally, the fourth one is service, Diakonia. And Diakonia is a word that commonly means, I guess, maybe some kind of a servant. But here you have this service. Our definition for service, or diakonia, is showing the love of God to people both inside and outside of our faith community. Okay, how do we do that? Through acts of mercy, relief, rehabilitation, and development. And so this talks about the church's engaging society, the church's involvement in working to be a voice, all of these things. To engage, to interact, to work. When a key is inserted into a lock, it engages that lock, and it allows that lock to do the things it was intended to do. And we would argue at Seats that that's what the church is intended to do, to actually engage society, to unlock those things in society that need to be unlocked, to lock up those things that need to be locked, and to help, that's from Matthew 16, of course, and of course to help society shape itself around the concept and the teachings and the life of those in the kingdom of God. 4 functions of the church, 4 simple things that we can believe: kingdom building, truth-telling, good news, and service. We'll talk more about these in depth in further videos, but just like you to ponder those for a little while. Think about how your church relates to that, how your ministry, how your concept of what it means to be a Christian relates to functionality as opposed to identity or something like that. I think we need to move beyond identity into functionality.